Hello. Thank you for having me here. Today I will talk about introducing AI to your company the right way. And I have been around for a little while, first working in academia, getting my PhD, and building machine learning models for the academic world. But over the last decade, I have been living the startup life, working at companies here in San Diego and some Bay Area companies. Over the last 3 years, I've been building an AI team at Airspace, which is a time-critical logistics company, so moving things really urgently, fast, perfect case for AI because a lot of decisions for this high-stakes logistics need to be automated and happen really fast. We don't have time to use people to provide estimates or even do any decision-making. It's been a huge pleasure and a huge learning opportunity to build the team from the ground up, and I learned a lot along the way, as well as on all my previous experiences. In my free time, I'm an avid theater lover, a patron of arts here, and very occasionally a performer. So when I was putting this talk together, I struggled with images. I think it's always engaging to use images. And then I had this idea that I'm going to use DALL-E, which is one of the new hot things. It's an AI-based tool. You put a prompt and it creates an image for you. I spent so many hours on that, just getting the prompt right. That probably would have been better off creating my own images, but it kind of turned out nicely. I promise you, AI did not write my talk. But maybe I'm just a hologram here, completely created by artificial intelligence. So we'll never know, I guess. So I'm going to go through the main aspects of starting AI at your company. And I'm going to kind of always go through the doomsday scenario, things that I recommend to never do, avoid, and then the recommended way of doing things that I approve. And I think it makes a huge difference. Nothing that I'm going to say is going to be groundbreaking, but put together, I think it's a good recipe. I don't know where each one of you stands on AI. Some might have advanced AI teams. Others, I might just be thinking about how to start and how to go about it. But I think it's a good refresher for anyone. And I've learned a lot of these things the hard way. So let's start about evaluating whether you need AI. So what are the wrong reasons to introduce AI to your company? Well, AI is very attractive. It's very sexy. Everyone's using it, and you might just feel drawn to that. Sometimes even just out of intellectual curiosity. I think that up until recently, it was also something that investors were drawn to. You can just say you're doing AI and tons of money lands on your lap, and that's changed. It doesn't happen anymore. But it is very wrong reason to do something just because it's very attractive. And similarly, you might have a fear of missing out. Everyone's doing it. There's AI in my refrigerator. I should have AI in my business. But as I tell my kids not to do something just because others are doing it, it's very wrong reason. Your competitors might be doing it, or they might be just saying it. You don't want to waste a ton of money just to jump on the bandwagon. The next one is probably surprising, but it is a wrong reason to introduce AI at your company just because you're sitting on a lot of data. I've been in this situation where I was hired at a company that has enormous amount of data, and they told me, okay, do something. This is perfect AI use case. And it just wasn't. So just because you have a lot of data, you shouldn't be jumping into using AI. And finally, if you want a quick fix right now, especially with the recent explosion of AI, you might think it's going to fix everything. I have problems and I'm just going to throw AI at it because everyone's doing it, and I'm expecting something to magically change because AI is magical. So that's not true. Don't do that. So if you are thinking along the lines of having any of these reasons to introduce AI at your company, I would say that's a red flag. Stop and reevaluate. You need to have the right reasons. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of money. AI is expensive. But let's walk through the right reasons to do that. So I created a checklist. It's very short, just 3 conditions that you need to meet all of them. And the most important one, where you start, you need to have a specific need. You need to have a use case where AI is a perfect solution. It can be just general and you kind of think it's going to help. You need to be specific. It could be something like I need a recommendation system to engage my users. Or it could be, I need a language model to automate communication. Or you need to automate decision-making because the scale now is so large that you just can't do it manually. The need needs to be extremely specific and also addressable by AI. I've had people, and I still have at my company, approach me and say, hey, I think we should use AI here. And he's like, well, that's not possible given this situation. You kind of not making sense. And a lot of people are jumping in thinking that something will happen, and it doesn't. You have to have specific need addressable by AI and machine learning. For the next slide, you have to have clean data. And that definition is changing. Even 5 years ago, that would mean no corrupted records, no dirty information. The tools have evolved. Our knowledge of how to deal with missing data and messy data have advanced. So that is more doable now. You can still build your models with somewhat messier data if you know what you're doing and if it still has information. But let's say you want to build a model about mammals, but all your data is around rats. That's not really clean, usable data because it's just going to be a model on rats. You have to have data that has enough information, and its language models are more okay with the messy data, where if it's going to be a decision-making model based on numeric values, then it could be harder when you have clean data. But you need to have your data evaluated, see if it's a good fit, if you have enough of it, and you don't need to have it now. You might acquire data or start collecting it, and if it's relevant to your problem. And finally, you need to be ready to invest time and money. AI tools right now are very democratized, meaning that you can have a plug-and-play solution, but they still cost money, and it will take much longer than you initially estimate. So you need to make sure that the expected returns on your investment are greater than the time and money it might take to start using AI. I think it's a very good chance that AI could really impact your team and be something that will transform everything. And on the next slide, I have a point that you might be unsure. If you've never worked with AI, how do you know that your need is addressable by AI? How do you know if your data is good enough or how much money and time it would take? And I recommend asking for advice. If you hire someone for 10 hours to go over your use case, look into that. The worst thing that could happen, they just say, no, I don't think this is the right case for you. Maybe try something else, try an algorithmic solution in this situation. You just paid 10 hours of work to someone, but you avoided jumping into hiring a team and pulling the plug. Ask for advice. There are many people out there who are very, very capable of providing advice. We all love helping and evaluating. And so now let's say that you decided AI is good for you. Let's do it. You need to hire a team, or you need to hire someone. What is the wrong way to do it? Let's see. The first mistake let's do the next one, is to hire too quickly. And that happens a lot. You say, okay, we're doing AI, let's have a large team, let's get 5 data scientists working on that. It happens all the time, and this is just not scalable. I really enjoyed Chris's talk that talks about simplicity and all those communication connections. Don't hire a ton of people in the beginning. That would stifle you, which sometimes is counterintuitive because you think the more people you hire, the faster you'll go. Not with AI. On the next slide is maybe you hired people, but they're not implementers. I come from an academic background, wrote papers, and I'm friends with a lot of people who've made careers in academia, and it primes you for something different, for thinking, maybe prototyping, very removed from the business and very not hands-on. Who you need are doers, engineers, or people who will immediately put things in production. Otherwise, you're kind of financing a theoretical team, which might not pay off. It happens all the time. I have a team who I actively am trying to prevent. It's just a very natural thing to see that AI practitioners tend to be siloed. You have your agile 2-week cycles for broader engineers. Well, you usually cannot do that with AI. It just doesn't work that way. So even the schedule is misaligned. You want to give them more freedom to explore and fail. And then you find yourself shielding them from the rest of the company. So now they're building something for you without knowing what is the business all about, not knowing the subject matter details. And it's just the worst, but there's some propensity for that happening at every company I have ever seen with the data science AI, and you have to actively fight it. These are the mistakes you can make. Large teams, people thinking or prototyping, building something completely removed from the reality separately. And surprisingly, that's, I think, more common than the nice way of doing things because they just naturally gravitates to that. So how to avoid that? My recommendation is to hire a scrappy generalist first. That's someone who can kind of do a lot of things, loves to move fast, wears a ton of hats, and can do something really quickly. I think I see smiles, so I feel like you know those people. And sometimes they have interesting personalities, but they can really start things moving. You don't need to have an expert in a narrow field of AI, which is a huge umbrella. You just need to make sure there's someone who can kind of do a little bit of everything. After that, you need engineers. For some reason, every company just keeps hiring data science people without proper engineering background. But engineers are going to be people who will bring AI to your team from existing somewhere as a prototype to actually implementing it. You might be using a third-party tool that's plug and play and everything's done, but it still needs to somehow be implemented in your business. It could be machine learning engineer, data engineer. A lot of those people are your friends, and you need them way before you need additional data scientists. Don't be afraid to build on existing tools. There's so many of them available now. You can try them. You don't have to marry them. You can just try another one. If you're starting, that's the best time to experiment. Only build something that is relevant to your IP and for your company. If you want to have a chatbot, don't hire someone to write it from scratch. Just use something available for you. I think that would expedite everything, and we're kind of all standing on the shoulders of what came before us. So, as I said, it's very important, but also extremely hard to keep the team in the loop. And the personalities of people who are doing this work, oftentimes, maybe they lack entrepreneurial curiosity, and you just need to foster it. Sometimes even I have to force my team to shadow operations just so they know what's happening. You have to include them in some engineering, broader engineering stand up and just encourage them being in the loop. And it's more important than it seems because they're building something and they're making decisions constantly what to optimize for. And they can only make the right decisions if they're aware of what's happening at a broader level, even at completely unrelated departments as marketing or finance that seem to be completely irrelevant to the ML team. So finally, just reiterating what I just said, but the last section is going to be how to empower the team that you have. Jump into complexity, and then you will not have anything available to you for a very long time. Sometimes the vision is clear and you say, I'm going to just build a large recommendation system model for all of my users, and you go do that. It's complex. It takes longer than you ever planned. And it's just not working because it's way too complex and you're waiting forever, and people are getting discouraged. Next is not giving your AI team executive support. And you might think, well, I'm paying the salary. I hired them. Of course I support them. Well, unfortunately, that's kind of mistaking the permission for buy-in. We need buy-in. It needs to be very proactive. You need to understand that there might be change management when you're introducing AI to your system because things might work differently. It might be not very easy, and some people at your company might be fighting it for many reasons, whether it's trust, avoiding complexity, or being too comfortable with the status quo. You need to actively support your AI team and be okay with slightly longer timeframes than what you're used to when you're just dealing with, let's say, front-end engineering or something else. Because without that, it's just not gonna work. And again, I've seen it so much, and you get such disgruntled people who are doing amazing things, but have no support. Not quantifying the impact, which is incredibly hard to quantify impact of AI, especially initially. So it's easy to just say, well, we have AI, it's great, right? We're now the pioneer of our field. And then you need to quantify it. So how much of impact is it exactly making? Because without that, you might just be paying for a team that brings no value. Again, big mistakes happen all the time at companies that are big names. But how to do it right, how to help your team? Start small. A small model that's maybe simple, that's maybe only addressing some portion of your need is beautiful because then it will allow to build on itself. It's sprout in something larger, but you can immediately quantify its impact. You have people who are empowered because they see something working. I would take a small, not extremely impactful, but still useful model now over something big and sweeping. Never. Because if you don't start small, nothing will ever happen. Small projects generate momentum. They get that buy-in because the executives are now, okay, I see the impact. Let's keep on going. And the buy-in is so important. I found somewhere on the internet that Maslow pyramid of AI needs, and I agree with that, but I augmented it by adding executive buy-in because none of that works if you don't have it. It's just that important. It comes before everything else. Set expectations and educate. So you want to communicate to your AI team, what exactly do you want from them? You want to communicate to the broader team or the broader company what's happening, why we're choosing to do AI, what to expect, what not to expect, and what it means exactly. It's going to be a different level depending on who you're talking to, but communication and setting expectations is very important. Optimize for impact might sound very weird because who doesn't optimize for impact? And I'll tell you, data scientists, because they optimized for the model being as accurate as possible or some metric that might be huge in the theoretical world, but provides zero impact on your business needs. If your team goes somewhere, sits there and creates amazing new tools that improve accuracy by 30% on the testing set, you deploy it and there's no change in your business metrics, then you just wasted 3 weeks of time. It's extremely important to optimize for business impact. And a lot of times it means doing things that are counterintuitive theoretically, or not necessarily building the best model, but building the most impactful model. And that's how you have to coach your team to always be accountable for the metrics that affect the business and not just ML metrics. So again, these are the tips to enable your team once you have it. And when I was trying to summarize the entire talk, just came up with that. You have to be very intentional on what you're building, why you're building, and how you're building it. And start small, really, really small. You can do, I don't know how familiar you are with machine learning, but sometimes a small logistic regression is just nice and easy to understand and a good way to start compared to big deep learning neural net, which you'll get to later. Just don't start there. And then optimize your impact to business impact that's aligned with your business strategy, and which sometimes it's just not a place to trust your intuition. It's a place to make sure that you're building something that brings bigger impact to the business than the cost of what you're building. And I think this is it.
Hi. Can you please tell us how long have you had your AI team, and maybe describe a little bit about your day-to-day, about what the AI team does?
So I had a job, and I was approached by people saying, hey, we need an AI team. Do you want to just join and work? And I said, I want to know that you really need a data scientist or AI, because I'm not sure you do. You might just not need a one full-time person. So I started consulting for them and quickly realized, oh yeah, you need the team. So joined them 3 years ago. And my first year was just me building things really quickly, small things with larger impact. Pandemic happened. So things were a little bit complicated. Then I realized that I just can't keep up myself. There's so many things to do, and started hiring people. Sometimes they were bad, toxic hires. And I wish I recognized that it's important to let them go sooner. But now I know some of them are amazing. So now we have a team of 4. The day-to-day we have a lot of models, 10 models right now supporting decision-making, logistics, routing, all of that, plus some other non-machine learning solutions that we're also responsible for. So a lot of our time goes into maintaining those things. And that's one thing I didn't mention. Maintenance happens, it's there, it costs money, you have to always budget for that. I figured everyone knows it from engineering. But also we spend a lot of time developing new things. We fail a lot because sometimes you want to predict something and it's just not worth it. But then we roll out new things. And the interesting challenge is that I might predict something, for example, how long customs would take. It's a big unknown and extremely volatile and changes a lot, especially since the pandemic. But if there's no good way of using it in a router, and when we predict the quoted time, then it's kind of a useless model. So thinking of the most useful model, the most impactful model, trying, failing, but also a lot of maintenance, troubleshooting, and keeping up with the changing universe, where if the model's created 3 years ago, then oftentimes I have to go back and address it and change it to make it represent the current reality. I think that's my responsibility as a leader, and I spend overwhelming amount of time on meetings, shadowing, talking to people, so my team is a bit shielded from that, and I can translate it to them. As a director of AI, I sit a lot at the same table with other directors, so I hear their conversations, and just being in person, overhearing that, it plays a big part of it. Coming back to the team, throwing solutions back and forth. I try to encourage them as well to occasionally join those meetings, maybe get outside of the comfort zone, learn more. And we do a lot of shadowing frontline operations which no one on my team likes, but then they always find it useful because you just for an hour watch someone work. It's very stressful because those people are saints. But then you're like, oh, they use that. Oh, no, that they don't call like that. They do that. So learning those little things, so having mandatory shadowing sessions outside of the department are very helpful.
Developing an AI team, how you overcome the fact that a lot of time when there is a new technology, a company try to hire team and develop everything in-house. And in particular in AI, things evolve very rapidly. And so how to make the team open to look for outside solution rather than just try to rebuild the wheel?
It's a big challenge for us because we have a lot of tools built in-house, but what we found for our specific need is that off-the-shelf solutions are usually not flexible enough. In terms of fostering curiosity and making sure we're staying on top of things, I found that you're not going to have the entire team do that. It's not in everyone's personality, but it's really enough if 1 or 2 people are there and we'll almost make it part of their job. So they stay on top of everything. And then maybe once a month, there is drinks and conversations where they, present a little bit of what they found, why something could be useful for us, why it's not a good way to go, which helps you bond, but also you learn a lot by sharing with each other. So we have this came back after the pandemic because during COVID when we were not together, that was a bit harder, even though we tried. But now it's kind of nice. We share, we ask questions, we discuss.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about, having a team that be aware about what's going on. It's more about, do you collaborate with external AI companies or, try always to do everything?
We actually do. So one example, monitoring the data that goes into our model and monitoring how the model's used is kind of hard. And you can just write a lot of that. It's not hard in terms of, it's very straightforward. You need to quantify that and that. It's boring. It's very resource intensive. So when we figure out that we'd rather outsource it, we found a company who does it for us. And it's kind of nice. We just get all the alerts from them and it worked for us. So otherwise we would have spent months writing something similar. So that was the right answer for us. Where other times when we're creating scheduling tool for our company, because I have a lot of operations people, and it was very hard to schedule them so that's perfect schedule aligned with the demand. None of the scheduling tools work for us because some of them are focused on the nurses or call centers. None of them worked for us, so we just wrote our own. So it's kind of always evaluating whether something is best to be written in-house or outsourced.
Can you talk about impact and quantification? Like, ever since your team was put in place, how much impact have you in your context brought about, quantified? If you can share something like that.
Yeah, of course. It's extremely hard, I'll tell you. And the reason is because we're pushing out models and automating things. At the same time, other things are changing with a shared goal to make things faster, smoother, with fewer touch points. So we can separately measure what our model does in terms of performance, and we can measure downstream metrics as how much fewer touches we have done by humans or how much better the service is, which then harder to decipher what came from us versus what came from simple UI change. So introducing the kind of midstream metrics that separate the two is essential, and sometimes it's hard to think of them, and sometimes you have to add additional data logging for that. I would say that a lot of things we do would not be possible without machine learning, because if you want a person to log in and say, I'm shipping an airplane engine right now, and have them click a button and have a quote and the route and the quoted delivery time available instantly, that's just not possible without predictions from the machine learning, unless you just put a lot of flat things you're saying, like, oh, it will take an hour to get on location, it will take that much, but those would be extremely inaccurate. So to accurate just certain things, just the virtue that we were able to make features possible, and then they brought in new customers. So part of that revenue could be attributed as an impact from having those models. Yeah, so our investors have always been very excited and interested in AI, but they also hold us accountable, saying, okay, you introduced these tools, so we want to see fewer manual touches per the same volume. But then it could get murky because maybe your complexity grows. Maybe at first you were doing simple orders, now your complexity is much bigger, so it's going to be still hard, but you still have to constantly try daily. I spend a lot of time quantifying the impact of my models, and it's annoying, but I think it's extremely needed.